And as you may have heard President Akufo-Addo talk about in 2018, gold worth $5 billion was unaccounted for. And as I told you earlier, between 2014 and 16, thereabout, $10 billion worth of gold was unaccounted for. The people who are behaving as if this is, if you listen to the guys at the port, guys at the airport saying, oh, we do everything right, so we are discounting, as if this is a Ghana-only problem. You must be reading about the Africa-wide problem and how this is a real issue in Africa where there is mineral resource. Too much of it going unaccounted for. All right, let me welcome my guest, Ben Boakye, Executive Director, African Center for Energy Policy, ACEP. Ben, thank you very much for joining us. Hello, Ben. You are with us. Yeah.
Thanks for having me. And good morning.
Thank you very much. Also, Dr. Theo Echampong is economist and political risk analyst. Thank you for your time.
Good morning.
Great to have you. We have Seth Emmanuel Tepe, who is former finance minister, consultant, and executive director of the PFM Tax Africa Network. Thank you for joining us, sir.
Thank you, and good morning to your viewers and listeners.
Good morning. Thank you very much. It's good to know that you are making time to get back into the classroom. We have known that you used to visit and teach at Harvard, and you are back teaching at the University of Ghana Business School, and doing several other, using your knowledge to assist. Thank you very much. In the studio, later we'll be joined by Dr. Kwabena Otu, who is Chief Economist and Director, Labor Research and Policy Institute, Trades Union Congress, TUC. And here in the studio is Dr. Stephen Amwa, MP in Sherso and former CEO, Microfinance and Small Loans Center, Maslock. Thanks for making the time, sir.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for having me here.
Great. So let's begin with Ben. How does this sound to you when you hear these reports? And I began on a certain note. I've also been reading a certain special report that suggests that people are getting disenchanted, particularly in political leadership across Africa, because things just don't seem to work. If they work only for the elite. So you have our latest Auditor General's report, and the report is that as much as a whopping 20 billion cedis is unaccounted for. Of course, this is not new. It is ritual. So the temptation not to feel anything about it is there. And that's 20 billion within 2017 and 2019. Then the Africa Confidential report I referred to, that tells us about the things that have been happening at the Tema port. You see several billions that, must have gone down the drain as in corrupt activities involving the political elites. They don't mince words about how they go about the report. And then this issue of the gold that goes unaccounted. 2018, $5 billion, and 2014 to 2016, PEAC estimated $10 million. How does it feel? Just a brief, get into your mind.
Yes, thanks, Samson. I think I share the frustration of many Africans when these numbers are thrown, at us, not once, not twice, but persistently. We are faced with the same challenges, and we seem not to have a solution to them. And I think maybe the conversation should be broadened to see how we fix the systemic challenges that we have in our governance architecture. And I think that is what the problem really is. It's not about the gold sector or the oil sector or any other sector. There are problems, systemic problems, that we have to find a solution to. Otherwise, we will be dealing with issues sector by sector as they emerge, but it's a deeper systemic problem that has to do with accountability, institutional efficiency, and we have to find a way to fix these problems. Otherwise, we are not going to have a solution to it. I mean, the gold sector problem, this work that was done by Boakye really highlighted some of the work we did in 2018. And that was part of a project, a program we're part of, the Ghana Revenue Reforms Program. And we did a report for GRA really to help them understand what is happening in the gold business, particularly the small scale business. And we highlighted the same challenges, how the evasion happened, the key participants in the evasion, and the fact that tax policy was not addressing what was germane or what was most critical in that space. And that is accounting for the gold that is actually produced in Ghana. We don't seem to understand how these numbers play out. We don't know who is producing what, apart from the multinational companies or the big players. The state doesn't have any mechanism to be able to account for gold production in Ghana. So if you implemented a tax policy that targeted the limited amount of gold that was coming to PMMC, you are only going to incentivize further evasion of the legal account. So that was what our work really sought to do, and we were hoping that GRA would pay attention to those numbers that we were throwing at them for them to be much more serious, because it is a very deep-seated problem that you can't just impose tax to be able to achieve results. We saw, some of these international merchants, if you like, who brings in goods to come and sell. And what they do is that they connive with some of the gold buyers who probably are licensed by the state. And they give them the cedis from their proceeds in Ghana, and they use the proceeds to buy gold and give them the dollar offshore. So you're not even able to account for the whole gold trade. And that also makes it difficult for you to account for the trade of these merchants domestically, because they don't ship their currencies, through the banking system, and you're not able to track how much money they are making and how much money they are shipping out for importation of goods and all of that. Beyond that, also institutional defects and problems with the GRA itself, where custom officers were involved in the transit of gold across the borders. You only needed to know which custom officer was at the border at what time. And the syndicate is so organized that they could know which port across the sub-region, whether Togo, Mali, within what specific time they can ship the gold from. So if you are looking to catch them at Kotoka, they are going to Mali for a particular time, depending on which network is available to be used to export the gold. So it was a well-structured mechanism for evading tax and also accounting for the output.
Okay, Ben, we'll get... Go ahead.
Yeah, so I was just saying that even where some of the buyers, took tax from the gold producers, there was no system to check whether that tax was actually even accounted for, because the gold producers really didn't bother to take the withholding tax certificate from the gold producers. So a gold buyer may have taken a withholding tax, but the gold producer wouldn't have the capacity to track that, because the withholding tax certificates were just not provided. And in some instances, Even the gold buyer will ask me, if I'm taking withholding, this is the price I'm offering for the gold. If I'm not, this is the price. And usually the price for not taking withholding was higher. So the incentive really to pay tax was non-existent. So the proposal then was for GRA to really look at mechanisms to track output. And once you're able to track output, you can then decide whether it is 0.5%, 0.2%, or 1% that is optimal to sustain the accounting of production. Then policy can be engineered to be able to attract that. If you check the numbers that even the president mentioned, 5 billion, right? If you were able to take 1% from the 5 billion, that is $50 million, for the budget. All right, so you really need to know how much gold is produced, but unfortunately, the incentive to do the hard work, and in fact, that is the biggest part, to do the hard work.
Okay, so Ben,
policy to stop illegality and track production.
Ben, I will return to you. We get into a lot more detail, and then to look at the proposals, because that's most important. We need to get out of this ritual. But in some 30 seconds, tell me, how does it feel, particularly for civil societies like yours? How frustrating is it that you are seeing these thefts all the time, and there doesn't seem to be any concrete action to stop it?
It is really frustrating, and especially where you sit at a table, you talk to policymakers about it. Sometimes they understand, the challenges, and they will tell you that, this is something we have to work on, only to go to sleep on them. And we keep working, we keep trying, and we're not getting the results. It gets worried sometimes, but we have to keep trying to see how we can engineer policy the right way. We're not saying we know it all, but if we can engage to ensure that, all outputs can be evaluated and to arrive at a good decision, that will help. We engineer policy within 2-3 days. It is on the way to implementation. Whether it's efficient, we can test it before we go ahead to implement it. We don't do that kind of rigorous work on policy to ensure we can optimize it. So that is the challenge we have to deal with. We will keep trying. I know some people have given up, but those who still want to keep doing it, we can encourage them to persist, to ensure that we can all contribute to helping our countries across the region to really change the trend and improve lives for our people.
All right, thank you very much. Now, Mr. Boakye, I'll come to you, but I need you to listen to these guys, and then we bring you in because of where you sit and the previous, opportunity that you have had at the highest level in government. Dr. Theo Champong, if you look at it generally from the picture I paint, and that I know, from what I know, is just a small aspect of all of this. It's just a tip of the iceberg, and that the corruption at this level is actually very, very deep. Capital flight from the continent, as in Africa to Europe and the Americas, is about 900 billion, while the total of the continents, is less than 300 billion. That's our debt. I'm looking at it from a perspective to get me to feel how we can really resolve our problems. Africa loses in excess of 50 billion to 60 billion annually through illicit financial outflows, according to the report of the high-level panel. The picture I paint with the introduction, from where you sit, what's your response to it? Or you have become, numb to it?
Interesting question you ask. No, I haven't become numb to it, but it also kind of shows you the realities that we're dealing with. So just like Ben, I have also been involved in doing a lot of work in this sector, and you'll be shocked at some of the things that you find. So clearly, yes, there's the illicit financial flows. We've got transfer pricing issues. But what Kwete's documentary actually demonstrates is that we have very deeply entrenched criminal syndicates. We have cartels that are moving or conducting these activities with the active connivance of several stateside actors, right? So if you watch the video and some of the work we've been doing on the sidelines, it is very clear that you cannot move these goods, you cannot move gold, you even cannot smuggle certain, like rosewood, another example.
Yeah.
You cannot move it out of the system without having people involved in the value chain, but particularly on the state side of things. And it demonstrates or tells me that we do have a big systemic problem or an issue, and there are very serious cracks within the accountability measures that we've got in country, as well as the fact that, of course, a lot of the enforcement agencies are not particularly well equipped sometimes to even pick up on some of these activities. There is an index that actually tracks organized crime and criminality in Africa. It's called the Enact Africa Organized Crime Index. Ghana is ranked 26th out of 54 countries. And then in West Africa, it is actually ranked number 10 out of 15 for criminality, right? And when you dig into it, what you see is that there are very several pervasive markets. So here I'm talking about human trafficking and smuggling, arms trafficking, illegal drugs trade, and most recently things to do with non-renewable resource crime. So this is where your galamsey and rosewood and all those exports go into. But it shows that, look, there are three things. The borders we have are very porous. Ben gave you a classic example of you go and chase them in Kotaka today and tomorrow they are in Mali. But beyond that, there's a lot of insider manipulation. There are people within the system that are gaming it for their own advantage, and that is like entrenching corruption as well. So where you look at all of our entry ports in Ghana, from Tema to Accra and a few of the other places, the issues, whether it is gold or galamsey or illegal drug smuggling, they come back to the same set of causal factors. The question then is, how do we address it? I think there are some solutions and we can come to that, but at the core is the political economy. At the core is how we incentivize people. And if we don't address the insider manipulation bit, the involvement of the stateside actors, unfortunately, we are just chasing or would be chasing around the bush on this. The illicit financial flows is a big deal. And if you do a lot of the work in this together with like the transfer pricing, but I just want to focus on illicit financial flow, you see a connection between that and even the funding of political party activity all across Ghana and in Africa at large. So in one breath, what these syndicates, cartels are doing is buying the stateside actors and at the same time supporting the political activities in the country through various illegal means. And that even makes the problem or addressing the problem a bit more difficult or deeply entrenched.
You mentioned, political party activity and party financing. And in recent times, I've been reading Justice Apau's report, the Sole Commissioner's report. And I come to appreciate why the report takes time to isolate party financing, campaign financing, as one of the ways to cure the humongous judgment debts that we have had to face as a country, where judgment debts have become one other way through which the political elites steal our money. They cook it in the name of a judgment debt. Now, the reason you mentioned that, and that interests me, is that we don't talk about it in this country, but we don't ask the question, how much goes into a particular campaign for a particular election year? We are told that as much as $100 million to up to $1 billion is spent on party political campaigning here in Ghana by one party. And the least you may have encountered in this country, in this Fourth Republic, would have been $400 million spent by one political party. Can we really stop this thing? This big corruption, can we stop it?
Not until you reform the way you raise money and finance party activity. That's, like, for me, one of the big things that we've got to address, because everything comes in a full cycle. In all the reports that I've seen, some of the work Ben has done, published some of the work that Honorable Tekpe has done. But if you look at work that other researchers in this area, like Professor Kwesi Enin of KIPCT have done, the conclusions and the findings are clear in my mind that the monies not only do not fund, right? So there are several layers to this. There are those in the food chain that are like middlemen, but there are people at the top that make sure that things happen. And when you dig further, you begin to see that often some of the monies finds their way to finance campaign-related activity. And so if we don't address that elephant in the room, which we all pretend isn't happening, then it's unfortunate, but I don't think that we're actually going to resolve or deal with this problem.
Yes, and our electoral commissions have rendered themselves into just, organizing event of an election every 4 years, when we have a very formidable law that empowers them to check how parties are funded and to have audited accounts submitted. And for failure to do so, the sanctions are so onerous. And there is no record in this country of our electoral commission doing any of that. Not even after a group of guys have gone to court to get the court to compel the Electoral Commission to ensure that, these audited accounts, how they get their funding and all of these things are published. Will we get there?
I am not sure. That to be just a simple answer I have to give to you.
Okay, so you hold on, we'll come there. Now, Steve, before I get to Sir Tekpe, the two of you politicians, so from where you sit, how does it feel hearing these stories? When President Akufo-Addo says $5 billion cannot be accounted for through our gold, export for 2018. What do you think he ought to be doing after telling us that?
Okay, thank you very much. My regards to our viewers this very morning. I think first thing is the acknowledgement of the problem and the acceptance of the fact that this is a problem which is quite systemic. And for the leader to allude to that fact, I think we need to tap him on the shoulder that you've done well. Other leaders, not precisely opposition leader in Ghana, but in general, would have hidden that. So in the first place, for the president to be that truthful, I think he's done well. But it's just a tip of the iceberg. It's just a tip of the cake or the ice of the cake or whatever. They use that is a phrase or whatever expression. But your ensuing question is the most important thing. What are we doing about all this after the revelation? Samson, I think this issue has to be given even bigger dimension that we are doing. And to me, it's only one aspect of the leakages in terms of state resources in Africa, not just under this regime or the previous, but it's been there. So we need to have very comprehensive approach towards it. Before I just go on, you heard our minister in charge of lands and forestry, Honorable Bujapo, saying that government will take steps to deal with this situation. We should also talk to Ghanaians to be more patriotic, because this is something done by a syndicate. Those in government, outside government, security agencies, the citizenry, all of us. And also we need to also standardize the taxation policies at the neighboring countries, the borders, because if it's less, definitely they'll be pushed to be doing all these things. But coming back to what the president is supposed to do, I suggest that we should sit down to review and redefine the critical activity path of these commodities, right from the inbound to the outbound, and also be able to identify the key stakeholder individuals and the groups, organizations, and also define specific segment policies, because this is a serious issue. It's only this thing that we are looking at. If from the Gulf, their trade accounts tells them that they have imported 7 billion worth from Ghana, and from our trade account, we have 2 billion, confirming what the president is saying. Something, it is extremely huge. But me, I'm not surprised.
Not a different story when it came to the roast food issue, right?
Exactly. But I'm not surprised simply because we are going through a lot of these things. And I think it accounts for the reason we are so much endowed with a lot of raw materials, natural resources. We are so rich as a continent, but we are very poor. On the global league table, we are at the bottom as a continent. But in terms of natural resources and raw materials, we are on top. And this is what I count for. I think as a country, first, we need to have properly defined what I would term as budget control policy framework that will take care of all this, because the leakages happen not only in the revenue aspect, but even expenditure. We are not looking there. This is very huge. I think one day we should have a whole day discussing it, because this is the revenue aspect where we are talking about royalties. What about taxes at the port? What happens? What about even those compensations? Government pay them every day. They don't go to work. And I mean, woe betides anyone. You're a CEO or whatever, you want to talk about it, they will tell the story and maybe you'll be even hated. So we are losing so much as a country. So much that this issue is good the president has accepted. But for a president to come out and accept this and know this is happening in our country, not only today, it means he's ready to do something about it. And just as the minister promised, I can assure you, we will do something about it as a government. But then,
let me tell you this.
Okay.
People are tired of the promises. They are not interested in promises. They want to see action. Now, you just spoke about we are poor. Africa, we are poor. And I tried to give you a certain example of how illicit financial inflows to the Europe and Americas accounts for about 900 billion, a whopping 900 billion. Yet the entire continent, our debt, is less than 300 billion. And here we sit, crying we are saddled with debt and going cap in hand. And yet the mineral resource and the thievery from the top, there's not some guy in a village stealing a goat and having to rot in jail. That's what we're talking about. So people want action. If you are coming to announce something, you must have done something before you tell us. You don't think so?
Oh, but I agree. Something is being done. Government is working on it. But of course, the medium or the opportunity, the time frame.
Government is working on it. Government is working on it. It's hackneyed. It's a cliche that people don't want to hear anymore.
But respectfully, if we also always limit these problems to heads, we are in trouble, because this is a whole syndicate staff, right? Even from the bottom.
The leadership, they say, it's everything.
Yeah, leadership is not only His Excellency Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, His Excellency former President Mahama. Here, this table, why everybody's talking about Newsfile in Ghana? Because of you. If you don't take care, one day we change you, somebody may do better or worse. So the leadership that we are talking about, leadership at the port, leadership even in the village, leadership at various desks, that's what I'm saying, that the critical activity path of this whole issue should be well reviewed, because there are segments, inbound, what comes in, the operations aspect, what are the policies there, who are in charge, the outbound, where does it go, who is in charge, even at the port, at the harbor, even the center where government is, who is in charge. All of us as a country, not until we begin to reset or redefine our mindset and the corporate focus of this country, I am telling you, we'll cry, and Nana Addo will come and go, maybe Dr. Bawumia will come and go, maybe another person will come and go, NDC may come and go, and even Jesus Christ will come and go. The problem will be there. So I appreciate what you're saying. We, as those in government, the president or whoever is in charge must lead the definition of the new thing that we are looking for. That one I agree with you. And must also ensure, not just talking, but the people involved, the stakeholder individuals, the stakeholder groups, I mean, those who are in charge of specific activities and have the tenacity and the leverage to control these things must also be up and doing. I don't know if what I'm saying is making clear to you. I'm
going to set up right now, but listen, and I ask the question.
Sure.
Yes, you say we should applaud the president for acknowledging it.
Sure.
When did he acknowledge it? 2018. And now remember that what we are talking about today, it's only to the UEA. We are not talking about India, where it's a lot. We are not talking about Switzerland. So if you brought all these together, that's why I say this is only a tip of the iceberg.
I agree. But you know, it's a systemic thing.
You said so. Age. I actually wrote it down. You said
between 2014 and 2016.
So the president acknowledged
2014 and
2018. No, he acknowledged it in 2018, and you say this is systemic. No. And today you are telling me that the minister for lands
and forestry, Honorable Jinapo,
has assured that he will do something about it.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is that in the first place, if we limit this thing to this regime, let's all be honest. I was reading other pieces of information, even sent to me by your desk, that between 2014 and 2016, we lost huge amount of money.
I have mentioned that here so many times.
Exactly. So what I'm saying is,
we lost an estimated 10 billion.
Thank you.
You're a politician. Give me an idea. What would 10 billion do to the road sector, to the education sector?
Huge. I read an extra that says that we could have done dual carriage of about 500 kilometers. That is between Greater Accra and Kumasi, between Greater Accra and Central Region, between Greater Accra and Volta Region. We could have dualized our roads. Accidents will be reduced, businesses will be enhanced, will increase our productivity, our GDP would have grown. Outside that, we could have done about 400 chip compounds. Yeah. The health sector would have been improved. It will do so much. Right. But some say...
So guess what? I'm familiar with this because JoyNews that did the story decided to give a picture to the world so that people can appreciate what we are talking about. How much does it cost us to fund free SHS?
I really don't have the figure in my head now. I don't want to guess anything wrong. Okay. But I don't think it will be more than the amount that we are losing.
Any close.
Any close, yeah. So we could have done a lot. But what I'm saying is that...
So you hold on for me. Let me come.